Hey everybody, welcome back to the Contrarians. Today we have another regular episode of the Contrarians where one of us is going to be in the hot seat and they're going to pick an album from a band that isn't considered their top album or their best album. And today Martin's in the hot seat and we're doing a really cool band, usually referred to as one of the most underrated bands, one of the earliest, heaviest bands from the 70s. They've got a lot of, I think their artwork is pretty cool. They have a lot of kind of like weird song titles and stuff like this. They're a very distinct band. Some people have said they're kind of like a mesh between Black Sabbath and Rush, but they're really cool. This band's been around a long time, and there's a lot of people. It's funny, I see comments on the internet from people who are like, I've been a music fan my whole life, and I just discovered this band, and they're amazing and stuff like this. So they're a really cool band. I'm excited to do this episode today, and I'm going to throw it over to Martin to introduce his pick for the band Budgie.
Yes, thanks very much, Marco. So yes, we're talking about Budgie today, and there's their first album. Just giving you a little brief history of the band. So they're from Cardiff. They formed in 1967, but this first album is 1971. So it's early, but it's not one of the very, very earliest. There's definitely heavy albums before this, but this is a pretty heavy album. And Marco mentioned the Rush thing. You take a look at them on the back, and they look a little bit like Rush, don't they? So that was their first album, 1971. Pretty heavy album. They followed it up with this one, Squawk, which is one of the early Roger Dean artworks. That was 72. I guess apparently I don't have a copy of their third album. Never Turn Your Back on a Friend has, quintessential Roger Dean artwork, and that's the next one. Then we get up to In for the Kill. They're on MCA all this time. Heavy band, a lot of bass to the bottom end, kind of slow, kind of sludgy, very, very obscure. But yeah, at through this point, 74, they're kind of building this reputation as a progressive, heavy, sludgy band. Then they get on to A&M. Well, I think they're still on MCA over in the UK, but this was the first one I got as a new release in 1975. I saw this in Strawberry Jams or Magic. No, it was in Magic Mushrooms in Spokane, 1975, and I saw that cover and just had to have it. Got it home, and it was a pretty cool album. There you go. But we're not going to get into talking what we think of these yet. That is for later. So that was 1975. And then I was listening to this again yesterday, went out for my jog. But that's their 1976 album. If I were Britannia, I'd waive the rules. Then we move on to 1978. They don't put out an album in 77. So there's their 78 album, Impeccable. And then they go through this sort of new wave of British heavy metal sound. They're still not making much money. They aren't making much inroads to anything. They put out the If Swallowed Do Not Induce Vomiting EP, which isn't very good. I think it's overrated, for this very underrated band. But then they put out Power Supply, super heavy album, really gritty, AC/DC-ish in places, but also really good new wave British heavy metal riffs. Budgie there's a famous early Derek Riggs artwork. You got Derek's signature up in the corner there. But this is one of the earliest Derek Riggs artworks. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then they make this record, quite poppy, but I like it quite a bit, Deliver Us from Evil, and that's their last album. By this point, they've got a new guitarist in Big John Thomas over here, sadly deceased now. Along the way, I should mention they had Ray Phillips drumming on the first three albums. Then they had Pete Boot for In for the Kill. Then they had Steve Williams, and Steve Williams was sort of their perennial. Then we've got, for some weird reason, I have ended up with 3 CD copies of the what was this called? Night Flight album again. I wrote liner notes for a Budgie reissue program. There's a couple CD copies of Deliver Us from Evil. There's a rarity packet. At one point early on, they were going to call themselves 6 Ton Budgie, but then they shortened it. The idea with that name is Burke Shelley's kind of got this ambivalent attitude towards heavy metal. So he wanted to be a heavy rock band with just a ridiculously, polarized all the way the other direction name of a band. So that's why they came up with Budgie. And then finally, years later, after doing nothing, they did one more album. You're All Living in Cuckoo Land, new guitarist Simon Lease. But Burke has gone through some pretty heavy health things. I think he's got some sort of an aneurysm that he has refused to get an operation on. So he's kind of like terminal and waiting for something to happen, sort of thing. Kind of a sad story. But yeah, so he's been in the news lately for that. I wanted to mention as well, my buddy Chris Pike from New Zealand has done these big, massive Budgie books. Look at that. That's on the first 3 albums alone. They're full color throughout. Then he did this one, another huge book. It's like 380 pages. Like I say, full color throughout on nice gloss paper. They're very reasonably priced. I hope they're still all in print. I'm not sure. But that's just on the next 4 albums. And then there's a little bonus thing he did. And then he's got one, again, just as thick, huge book, just on Budgie from 1980 to 2010. So all the reading you ever need to do on Budgie, to learn everything about this band, you can sort out through that massive, massive pile of books there. So pretty cool. So that's Budgie. They never really made it very big. They are one of the famed examples of a band that really tried to cash in on their early notorious heaviness with a new wave of British heavy metal direction for those 2 records, and then the last one was kind of poppy. But yeah, as Marco says here on the Contrarians, we can only do a regular episode of the Contrarians if we have a choice for an album that is our favorite by a band that is kind of not the industry standard for what people would pick for favorite album by a band. And mine, it's close, but for me, I went with Impeccable, 1978 on A&M. So there you've got the, that's framed up. It's kind of got a bunch of glare to it, but there's your CD cover of it. And then, of course, this has the funny situation where on the back, it's the bird carrying the cat away. There you go. So what I like about this record, this is a little bit like our Deep Purple and our Cheap Trick episode in that I picked this record because I generally am on board with way more songs on this album than I am on other Budgie albums. I've really come to the realization that this band isn't so much underrated. They're probably rated about where they should be, in that they've got a lot of absolutely classic songs, but none of the albums really stand way up as they're as great throughout. I mean, obviously there's Bread Fan, there's Crash Course in Brain Surgery, there's In for the Kill. What's another one? Sky High Percentage, Guts, Forearm Smash, Secrets in My Head. There's a bunch of really cool, awesome. I know I'm forgetting one amazing. Napoleon Bonaparte. There you go. So there's a lot of great classic songs that everybody likes, but I would say that most of the albums can get a little patchy in places where there's songs I'm not on board with. Now, this record, the funny thing about this album is that they had moved to Toronto from the UK. Basically, punk was happening over there. And they realized that, as Burke says, we were being seen as old farts kind of thing. They thought strategically Toronto would be good for touring in the States because it was close by and they could get into the States. But the funny thing is they recorded this album way out of town in Elmer, Ontario. There was this studio. I think it was called the Schoolhouse, right? Is it called Schoolhouse? Anyways, it was in a schoolhouse. No, Springfield Sound, and it was in an old schoolhouse. And a lot of international acts actually started recording there. It had a little run from 76 to 82, but they rehearsed in Toronto. They lived in Toronto for a long time. They were in an apartment block. And then they just found this studio and decided to record there. They're on A&M. A&M in Canada was really good to bands. They spent a lot of money on this album. They said that the entire album was recorded in this remote country location in Ontario. This is Western Ontario, down towards London, Kitchener, past that actually. They spent 3 full months working on this album. They did a lot of rehearsing and writing and kind of got really prepared. They were super meticulous in terms of mic placement around the drums and all this stuff. They spent a lot of time getting sounds. And what I like about this record is that so it's kind of self-produced also with Richard Manwaring, who was their live engineer. But what I like about this record is, okay, number one, let me get my CD copy out here so I can so number one, this actually does have one of those absolute drop dead Budgie classics in Melt the Ice Away, which is a really cool tune. It actually has 2 verse sections and no chorus, and it's super heavy. Metallica covered it on Dystopia, and it's really technical and cool. But one of the cool things about this record is it's the production on it is a little sort of like thin and meticulous and academic, like a Sin After Sin sort of sound. They didn't get a super heavy sound on this, despite all the work that they put into this record. But it is a good sounding record, and it's also very guitar, bass, and drums. Although there's a lot of strangeness to it as well. There's a lot of Budgie strangeness, but what they do on this album is the songs are sort of regular length, and other than two completely mellow tunes, which are great, kind of Beatlesque ballads. I really like All at Sea. What they do is all the strangeness is properly integrated into the songs, rather than strange song, heavy song, mellow song, strange song, 10-minute song, all that kind of stuff. So it has a real sort of even conceptual feel to it. And as I was saying before, I think the great thing about this record is I like way more songs on this record than I do on any other Budgie album, even though there are, those 6 or 7 absolute Budgie classics that can compete with anything on here. But yeah, Dish It Up's kind of a funky one. Pyramids is really kind of cool and heavy. Tony, I guess, was into Egyptology at the time. Smile Boy Smile is kind of like a combination between Celtic and heavy, maybe a little bit of a Thin Lizzy thing to that. I'm a Faker Too is like a slow and rumbling heavy one. But everything also has kind of that quirky Budgie funkiness to it as well. And Don't Dilute the Water at the end is heavy and cool and rocking. So yeah, it's, the other thing I feel about this record, when I look at the blue album cover and Sin After Sin as well, I think of Never Say Die, because Never Say Die is a record that Black Sabbath recorded in Toronto, and it's blue. And it's the last of an era. It's the last of the Ozzy era, and this is the last of the Tony Borge era. As you move into the new wave British heavy metal, so Power Supply is really their heaven and hell, and Night Flight is their Mob Rules sort of thing. And this is the last of the last gasp almost of this run of albums. It might even be their, well, I don't know if it's their 8th album, but it's right in the same sort of thing. Sabbath starts in 70, they get up to 78 with Never Say Die. Budgie starts in 71, and they get up to 78 with this one. So I've always had it right in mind with Never Say Die in some strange way. But yeah, so that's the story of Impeccable. And again, the big reason I have to pick this album is when I look at all of them, I see too many flaws across other ones where there's long passages where I'm not on board. But this one, I'm always entertained. It's bright, it's well recorded, it's varied, and it's essentially pretty heavy throughout, although never super heavy outside of maybe I'm a Faker and Melt the Ice Away. So there you go, Impeccable. Marco, tell me what the world actually thinks is the best Budgie album.
Oof, I think you're real off on this one. I'd be shocked if people agree with you. Not that Impeccable is a bad record, because there's some really cool stuff on it. Like Pyramids is really cool, right? It's there's some parts of it that's dark and complex. Melt the Ice Away is awesome. Like there's some really cool stuff on it, but I mean, like I'd be shocked if a lot of people agree with you. I think usually when it comes to Budgie, I think it's there's a couple of records that kind of always stand out as like the top Budgie records. I'm not gonna go into like album sales, because I mean, like this band didn't really have like a lot of album sales or a lot of hit singles.
Yeah.
Some of the records charted in the UK, some of them charted in Australia and stuff like this, but I'm not going to go into all of that. It's usually stuff like In for the Kill You see Bandolier up there. Never Turn Your Back on a Friend. Even the first record, I really, really like the first record. And like you had already mentioned the song Guts, which is amazing. Like there's a lot of really cool stuff on the first record. The author's really cool on the first record. Even like Everything in My Heart, I kind of like that little thing after Guts. New Disintegrating Parachute Woman is amazing. Like there's Homicidal Suicidal, You and I, like there's some really cool stuff on the first record. And I kind of like that fuzzy kind of sound that it has. I like that early kind of heavy sound. Even like I'm a big fan of the first Black Sabbath record as well, you know, even though you can say some of the later albums like Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath is produced way better than the first record. I really like the sound of the first record. AllMusic gave it 2 stars out of 5. It's one of the lowest rated on AllMusic, but what's interesting is there's no write-up for it. So it's just AllMusic just gave it 2 stars and didn't do a write-up. Some of the fans' reviews on AllMusic aren't that bad, actually. I did found a negative review on progarchives.com. Jazzy Woman gave it 2 stars. Jazzy Woman said, Budgie's 7th official release is a complete dud. By this time, the good jazz and blues mixture was long gone, and Budgie decidedly tried a more funk and soul influenced record with extremely mixed results. The final conclusion is an inconsistent album, flawed and heavily awkward transition that should have never taken place. Some excellent songs are trashed by complete garbage. The songs are barely even thought about in some cases, and the funk soul influence is somewhat unneeded in the Budgie discography. A 2 stars because of a few excellent songs, if you were to ask me. Stick to the first 5 albums if you really want to get into Budgie. And I think, you know, like I've done a little bit of research, and I think kind of like most people look at the later records as like there's good stuff on like every record, you know, like even like the last couple of records, there's some good stuff, but they kind of fall apart. And I think the most strongest stuff is off of those early records. And when you look at like the rankings and stuff like this, for example, like Sea of Tranquility did a top 10 Budgie's song list, and there's nothing from Impeccable on his list, right? Like his favorite stuff is from In for the Kill, Squawk, Never Turn Your Back on a Friend. He ranked the Budgie discography. Impeccable came in at number 8 on his ranking. In for the Kill was number 1. Never Turn Your Back on a Friend was number 2. Budgie, the self-titled, was number 3. Best ever albums had Bandolier at number 1. Never Turn Your Back on a Friend is number 2. In for the Kill is number 3. Budgie is number 4. Squawk is number 5. Impeccable came in at number 7. Ranker, which is fans vote, and the albums get ranked based on fan voting. Okay. Impeccable comes in at number 6. Number 1 is Never Turn Your Back on a Friend. Number 2 is Bandolier. Number 3 is In for the Kill. Number 4 is Squawk. So you kind of see like those Never Turn Your Back, Squawk, Budgie, usually they're kind of like in the top, and they might get mixed around a little bit depending on your tastes. Rate Your Music. Impeccable came in at number 9. And number 1 was Budgie, Never Turn Your Back on a Friend. Number 2 was In for the Kill. Number 3 was Budgie, the self-titled, sorry. And number 4 was Bandolier. It's hard to disagree with some of that stuff when you look at like the track listing for something like In for the Kill, which might be, I don't know, maybe their heaviest record, like one of the earliest and one of their like heaviest things. Yeah. Man, In for the Kill is amazing on that record. There's so much good stuff on that. Zoom Club, you know, like, and you know, and like you said, like there's good songs. I already mentioned the songs I liked off of Impeccable. Squawk has some really good songs on it. Rockin' Man is cool. Whenever I hear Rockin' Man, it reminds me of Almost Human by Kiss. But yeah, like when it comes to even set list, the top actually, what's interesting is Power Supply and Never Turn Your Back on a Friend are tied on set list representation live. Yeah. And In for the Kill came in 3rd. And you could pick any of those records. Never Turn Your Back on a Friend had Bread Fan on it. Baby Please Don't Go. There's so much good stuff on those early records.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm surprised at some of this. Okay, so first off, I'll have to say that you know, I mean, I've had most of the Budgie catalog by 76, 77. I remember being on a family trip where you know, I picked up Squawk, Never Turn Your Back on a Friend, the first one. I loved them for a lot of years, but those first 2 records have really gone down in my estimation for me. The one I really can't believe is up there is Never Turn Your Back on a Friend, because I find that album super uneven. I mean, Parents is a big deal. Bread Fan's amazing. It's maybe, the classic from the catalog, right? But I mean, the cover of Baby Please Don't Go, You're the Greatest Thing Since Powdered Milk, Tire Fitter, I don't think they're that great songs, right? If I was to say like what's coming up really close to Impeccable, I would have Power Supply up there because it's a great headbanging album. But I've always thought that it was really these two that were, universally, at least among my friends' set. Bandolier is the one that pretty much always is way near the top. And you're right. This is really consistent. In for the Kill's consistent pretty much throughout. It's pretty sludgy though. So I think my problem with anything from In for the Kill back is I find them a little depressing now, a little too sludgy for me, right? But Bandolier is really cool. But as I look at it, I'm so annoyed by these song titles and stuff. We got Breaking All the House Rules and Learning All the House Rules. That's one title. Slip Away / a Parrot Fashion Ball. Who Do You Want for Your Love / Never Turn Your Back on a Friend. Side 2, I Can't See My Feelings / Rock Climbing. Number 2 is I Ain't No Mountain, which is a cover on here, but it's actually done really well. This is a really well produced album too. And then 3A and B is Napoleon Bonaparte 1 and Napoleon Bonaparte 2. Like it's a real mess that way.
But that's an amazing tune though.
Yes, that is absolutely, it's either that or Bread Fan, which are the two Budgie classics, right? So this is a really good album and a really heavy album. But I don't know. I mean, and even Deliver Us for Evil, I have a real soft spot for because I played this album to death when it came out. But it's pretty poppy and people are horrified. I actually did this thing on at Zunior.com where I have all these short documents on things that have never been in print, like these stories of one albums. I also started to do these top 20 songs by certain bands, and I did about 5 or 6 of them. And I did a Budgie one, and I had a lot of songs off of this on there. I was quite amazed how much I really like the songs that I really like on this record. So this was their last one, and kind of poppy and not that well produced, not that well drummed either, I find. But no, I'm pretty close on In for the Kill and Bandolier and Power Supply. Those would be my next 3. But Impeccable, I feel it is consistent. It really does have a certain we're going to be wacky in this power trio field. But we're not going to record incredibly heavy. It's a good recording, but not a super heavy recording. Like I say, it's a little bit sin after sin, I think. But yeah, I just find myself rooting for every song, even the mellow ones on it, even Dish It Up, the really funky one on there. And for those reviews to say, oh, this is such a funky album. I mean, they're funky all the time, Budgie. I mean, they got a lot of funky stuff, right?
It's solid. Like Impeccable's solid, but it does seem in places that they are moving away from their sound, and it is not as heavy as some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
And I think even like Never Turn Your Back on a Friend, I think actually is a pretty good record. Like even You're the Biggest Thing Since Powdered Milk, I actually like that song, right? So like yeah, it's pretty solid. I mean, like Sea of Tranquility said Impeccable sounds like they're trying to sound like Steely Dan, and that they're trying to be sophisticated on that one. Fair enough. He also admitted that it is a strong record.
Yeah. Got to put some love for this one too. I was playing this a bit yesterday, and I really like the production on this, and it's got Sky High Percentage is a heavy song, and again is this is a really wacky and weird and proggy. So this album is actually slightly lighter than Impeccable, really, in total, but it's got some crushing riffs, like the If I Were Britannia main riff, and then it goes into this crazy weird, that is one of the oddest songs ever written. Like the verse, it's almost like they're trying to absolutely implode their career with the verse of that song.
Black Velvet Stallion.
Yeah, that's cool.
Wicked. Yeah, that's
really scary and weird, not incredibly heavy, but really, really moody. And then Quactors and Bureaucrats is one of those funky ones, but it kicks into a high gear with kind of the I don't even know if you'd call it a chorus, But yeah, so this one's recorded at Rockfield. They're one of the quintessential Rockfield bands because Rockfield is in Wales, right? But yeah, this is a much better album than I kind of originally. We always put it down because we were kind of horrified as kids when we got it, and it was much mellower than Bandolier, right? But yeah, I thought Impeccable was kind of heavier again, So there you go.
Well, yeah, cool. I think I've kind of gone over all my little notes. Budgie is definitely a really cool band with a lot of great records, and there's a lot of good stuff on each record. But other than that, I don't know if you have anything else that you wanted to say or.
No, I don't think so. I think we covered it off pretty well. So yeah, let us know in the comments below what you think. We've got a Patreon situation if you want to subscribe to that and help us out. That's really cool. We do a lot of Patreon exclusive content, and we've actually been doing get-togethers with the Patreon crowd, who are really smart guys, and we've done some neat shows with them. So yeah, let us know in the comments below. And other than that, I'll sign off for myself and Marco. Go play some Budgie.
That's it, dude.